For talking about skincare routine, you have one in your book. It's called the 2-minute 5-year younger skincare routine.
Yes.
Can you break it down?
So we did this study in my office where everybody's asking like, what do I do for a skincare routine? And I said, look, for me, I like to simplify things because yes, I know my ancestors come from South Korea, and South Korea is famous for having like a 12-step skincare routine. But who wants to seriously do 12 steps? And if you look at celebrities who they'll make videos on YouTube of like, oh, this is my skincare routine, and it's like 10, 12, 15 steps. Who has the time for that? The vast majority of us don't. So what I wanted to do is basically try to create a skincare routine that is scientifically based, that anybody can do, and let's put people on it and let's see what happens if they do it. So we took people who had really not taken care of their skin. Like they weren't people who are like sun worshipers, but they also weren't people who have been doing a lot of skincare in general. And we put them on this very basic skincare routine for 2 months. Literally, it took 2 minutes a day to apply it. That's it. And after 2 months, we actually put their photos online and we surveyed the audience, say, how much younger do they look? And the average was about 5 years younger, literally after just 2 months of doing a very simple skincare routine. Now, I'm going to tell you, Drew, if you start this skincare routine, you are not going to look 5 years younger in 2 months because your skin looks great. Okay. So we're talking people who have like normal skin, like, they don't look old, but they don't look young. You look young, so it's different. And that skincare routine is very simple. So you start in the morning, you cleanse your skin. You want to pick an appropriate cleanser for your skin type. And so very simply, if you have oily skin, go with a foaming type cleanser. If you have dry or real sensitive skin, then go with a hydrating or a milky cleanser. After that, I recommend applying an antioxidant serum. The most common antioxidant, almost all skincare lines have it, is vitamin C. Just like we mentioned earlier, hitting the aging process, that oxidation from the inside and the outside. And here's a little tip for your listeners. If there was a study that showed that if you combine vitamin C and vitamin E, that you get a synergistic effect. So it's not just you get the antioxidant effect of one plus the other, but they actually work synergistically for an even better combined effect. And then the third step in general would be to apply a sunscreen, at least an SPF 30. We've kind of talked about that. If you're not going to be in the sun, you don't want to wear it, then obviously that's up to you. That's all you have to do in the morning. Cleanse, antioxidant serum, sunscreen, that's it. In the evening, so important to cleanse. You have to cleanse your skin. You got to get rid of the day's worth of grime and dust and dirt and oil and sweat. And if you've got makeup, some people will even do a double cleanse to get rid of that makeup. If you only wash your skin once a day, make sure it's at night, okay? Because you got to let your skin breathe at night. And then the second step is to apply an anti-aging cream. And the one we usually recommend are retinoids. The easiest one is retinol. So retinoids are derivatives of vitamin A, and prescription strength retinoids are Retin-A or tretinoin. That you have to get from a dermatologist, or a doctor. And then non-prescription strength is retinol. Non-prescription strength retinol, essentially, the reason why it's not prescription is that it goes on your skin inactive, and then your skin actually will convert it to the active form, tretinoin, which is what is in the prescription, essentially. But it's less aggressive, it's usually in smaller amounts, and it's much more easily tolerated. There are scientific studies to show that applying prescription strength tretinoin can improve wrinkles, fine lines. It can thicken the skin, it can improve blemishes, and it can even reverse early pre-skin cancers. And that's something a lot of people don't realize, is if you have a history of skin cancer, I strongly encourage you to talk to your doctor about using tretinoin or Retin-A prescription strength, because it may reverse early pre-cancers that haven't quite come up to the surface yet. You'll not know what it does because it just prevents them, essentially. But that's prescription strength. Most people can go with a retinol that most skincare companies have a version of that. And then if you want to apply a moisturizer on top of that, feel free to do that. Moisturizers are meant for comfort. They're not truly anti-aging. So there's a fallacy that people have of, my mom looks really young because she wears a moisturizer. She's putting moisturizer on every day. That's not the case. Moisturizer will not de-age your skin. It just makes it more comfortable and plump and hydrated. That's all you have to do at night. Cleanse, an anti-aging cream, ideally a retinoid. I can talk about some other options too. And then following that up with a moisturizer as desired. And then the only other thing I recommend is maybe twice a week, once a week if you have sensitive skin, you want to exfoliate your skin. Exfoliating your skin either with a simple scrub or with like a alpha hydroxy acid, like at-home peel, that helps to get rid of the upper layer of dead skin cells. By getting rid of that upper layer of dead skin cells, it sends a cellular signal to the deeper layer of skin cells to start turning over and moving more quickly, essentially. So when we have a skin cell that's formed, it's formed in the deeper skin, and as it gets older, it basically becomes more and more superficial, eventually gets to the top surface of the skin, and eventually sloughs off. When we're young, that process happens typically about every 6 weeks. As we get older, that process slows down. It becomes 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks for that skin to turn over. And that's one reason why our skin kind of gets drier and rougher as well as we get older. And so by exfoliating your skin, you can cause that cellular signal to happen and cause your skin to turn over more quickly. And that's it. Literally 2 minutes a day. If you've got kind of average looking skin, you can potentially look in 2 months of doing that 5 years younger after those 2 months.
That's great. Love it. Love the simplicity. With retinol, is it accurate? You really shouldn't be taking it if you're trying to get pregnant or if you are pregnant?
So retinol, retinoids, whether it's prescription strength or retinol, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, we don't recommend it. I haven't seen any true science to show that it's harmful, but we do know that it can cross into the milk and potentially through the placenta into the baby. So it's something that we definitely discourage.
Yeah.
It's different than Accutane, which is isotretinoin. That we do know can cause birth defects and things like that. So that is a whole other story.
Yeah, I think same with Botox, which my wife is
Botox
not happy
as well.
about right now because we're in the process of wanting to start a family one day. You can't have Botox.
No. And we do know Botox can potentially cross one skin. We don't know of any potential harm for it, but we're not going to conduct those studies.
Yeah. You don't want to be messing around.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So the foundation of what's there is just even with the 2-minute skincare routine, you can be proactive and take care of your skin. Unfortunately, I feel like, a lot of probably Gen X and older. I'm right on the cusp. I'm a millennial.
I consider you a
82.
millennial. Yeah, you're a millennial.
I was born in 82.
Yeah.
So I'm right on the cusp. But a lot of things that I hear from my friends and family who's right in that Gen X and definitely in that boomer generation above that is I wish I got started on taking care of my skin earlier.
Yeah.
And primarily, I wish I didn't damage my skin as much as I did, which of course, a big part of that is sun, but it's all these other things that we talked about in the beginning part of the interview that even a lot of people are not aware of: diet, lifestyle, stress, etc. So having a good foundational skincare routine, guys and girls, we all want to look good as we get older and we want to feel better. Now, let's talk about some of the other interventions that we can stack, starting with cost per intervention or time or downtime.
What would you start with?
What would you start off with? What is the high return on investment that would follow?
So the first thing that I would recommend, and it's very interesting because this is a favorite of holistic health practitioners, and plastic surgeons and dermatologists don't talk about it at all, is red light therapy. So red light therapy comes in many forms. There's handheld red light devices, which honestly I don't like because I think they're a pain, where you essentially treat a quadrant of your face at a time. So you may do a few minutes in one quarter of your face and a few minutes in another quarter, and you move along, which to me just seems kind of onerous. There are tabletop devices, which I think are really good, where they're usually kind of rectangular and they sit on the top of a table and you just basically look into it for several minutes.
Yeah, I have one of those, like a Juve light.
Yeah. And so those I think are really good. And then there are full body ones that you can put your whole body into. And then there are these creepy looking mask ones that a lot of people like, where it's a mask that you put on your face that has little holes for your eyes and your nose and your mouth. And it lights up and you look really creepy wearing it, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah, you look like Jason on Halloween.
Yes, exactly. So all of these devices work. The interesting thing, what is the science behind it? And we don't know exactly why they seem to help. But the belief is that the red light, essentially, it's energy. Now, red light, so for people who have not used it before, it's like laser light, but the best way to describe it, it's like a cold laser, like a laser pointer. So if you take a laser pointer and you point it at your skin, you can point at your skin for 10 hours and you're not going to cause a burn on your skin. There's no heat energy to it. The lasers that we use in our office do create heat because there's a chromophore, basically, there's a target color that they heat up. And so that's a different type of a laser than red light therapy and some of the at-home laser type devices that we use. Red light therapy is believed that the laser light from the red light, essentially, the energy from that light is transferred to the mitochondria of your cells, and it helps to increase ATP production, which essentially is energy. This is the belief. I have not seen any proof that this is exactly how it works, but this is how we believe that it works. But when you actually do look at scientific studies on red light therapy for anti-aging, they are positive. There was one study that looked at 90 days that that their subjects used red light therapy for their face. And they found in 90% of them, they appeared to have an improvement in the skin tone and 80% in skin hydration. So it does appear to help. There are even split face studies where they literally treat half of the face. There was one study where they treated half the face on patients and found improvement in wrinkles and elasticity on the side of the face that was treated with the red light therapy. So there are multiple studies that do show that red light therapy definitely works for anti-aging of the skin. That's how we believe it works, but we're not 100% sure.
But there is a lot of studies on red light therapy, right? I think there's like over like 1,000 PubMed studies that are there. So it's like highly regarded as safe.
And red light therapy, has been used for so many other things with recovery from injuries. And, I use it for my hair. I have a red light therapy device, a helmet for my hair that I use. So there are studies with other things. But when you look at just anti-aging of your skin, there are some, not tons, but there is scientific support to prove it. That's why I find it fascinating that dermatologists and plastic surgeons, like if you go to our meetings, nobody's talking about red light therapy. It's kind of strange. It's like this weird black box that's never been opened. But it does seem to help. And so they're not that expensive. You can do this at home. If you're looking for the most cost effective, the least expensive way, and especially if you live, let's say, and you don't have access to a med spa or a dermatologist, this is a great way that you can take matters into your own hands and rejuvenate your skin just by doing this at home.
That's awesome. And people can look up brands online. I think you have one on your website as well too.
Yeah.
One that you recommend.
Yeah. So I like, there's so many brands. There's a Loom, there's a Juve. Yeah. And we've got one, that I'm a fan of. So
awesome. That's great. Okay. So red light therapy. That's one.
Oh, so that would be so go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry. Let's go from there.
So that would be, if you're going to buy anything for home, then red light therapy is definitely the way to go. Now there's also other at-home devices for people that do seem to help as well. So not anti-aging so much, but if you are looking for like laser hair removal, there's actually at-home laser hair removal devices that can work pretty well. They were 10, 15 years ago, they were kind of so-so. They've gotten much better now. So there are options for you. There are even blue light devices that can help potentially with acne. And so for people who are, let's say, listening to this podcast and they, don't have the money to go to a med spa and get all these treatments, then look for some of these at-home treatments. But once again, red light is where I would start. The next step is going to be going to see an actual provider. And there are med spas all over the country that have relatively inexpensive treatments. And the first thing I would look at that I think is a great bang for the buck is IPL, intense pulse light. IPL essentially is similar to a laser, but where it's a little bit different, honestly, is that you tune the laser to different frequencies, and it's a lot less expensive to buy than an actual laser. And the reason why that's important is that when you get laser treatments, I may buy a laser and it can cost me $125,000 to $150,000 just to buy that laser. And you're going to bet that the cost of that laser purchase is going to be passed off onto the patient. So whenever you get a treatment at a med spa or a doctor's office, the cost of that technology is going to be imparted to your bill. And you want to then keep that in mind when you're looking at cost-benefit analysis. An IPL device for that type of technology is the least expensive but most effective when you look at cost. And so whenever I talk to young plastic surgeons, I say, hey, what device should I start out with? I tell them, look, get an IPL device because it can do the most things and it's the least expensive to buy. As a patient or prospective patient, that falls in your favor because the device is not that expensive and it really is very helpful for treating one specific thing, and that's unwanted pigmentation. So the term sunspots, age spots, liver spots, they all are different terms for the same thing. And that is unwanted pigment in your skin due to excess UV radiation. Okay. So what happens when we get sunlight on our skin? The sunlight on our skin basically damages the DNA of our skin, but what protects our skin is melanin. Okay, melanin is the color of your skin, the pigment of your skin. As the melanin itself gets overrun, however, it can cause haphazard deposition throughout the skin. So if you get a lot of sun damage, then you can get these spots, which essentially is a melanin coming out in ways that it's not supposed to. And those spots will not go away unless you actively get rid of them. Now, the term liver spot is very funny because people don't really use that much anymore, but it has been used a lot in the past. And people think, well, geez, I've got these spots because there's something wrong with my liver because somebody called it a liver spot. But it's called a liver spot just because it's a color brown. Not that it has anything to do with the liver. But these are all different names for the same thing. It's basically unwanted pigmentation due to your melanin kind of going haywire from all this UV radiation. And it won't go away on its own unless you get rid of it. The easiest way to get rid of it would be to do IPL treatments. Those IPL treatments use light energy to basically heat up that pigment and cause that pigment to be destroyed. And you get this spot that turns darker, and after about a week, it sloughs off and it's gone. And the great thing about IPL is there's zero chemicals. It's literally just light energy. I mean, what is, more natural than just light? And that's the great thing. It doesn't hurt. There's very low risk of burns or anything like that. It's very well tolerated, and it's pretty inexpensive when you're considering what you get.
Yeah, I know that my sisters have been a fan of that. I think I might have gotten some treatment like early days. And I know that for a lot of people who are brown or darker skinned,
you have to be careful.
You have to really go to a provider who's worked with individuals that have darker skin or brown skin, because there's different lasers that I understand that are good for certain skin types. Because if you get the wrong laser done in your darker skin, like myself,
be very problematic.
Then it can be problematic.
So it comes
But
down
I think there's a lot more awareness these days.
It comes down to something called PIH, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. And what that basically means is that if you have more pigment, more melanin in your skin, and you get inflammation in the skin, it can cause the body to create a melanin patch essentially in that area. So if you or I, we get a pimple and it turns dark afterwards, we can get this dark dot or patch on our skin that can last for months. My wife is Caucasian, and if she gets a pimple, it gets red, and then 3 weeks later, there's no sign of it. If I get one 3 months later, I still see a dark spot there. And that's post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. And that's, once again, due to inflammation. Now just imagine if you get a laser treatment to your face, the whole face, and you get that type of pigment deposition on your entire face. That's what can happen. And so it's very important for people who have darker skin colors. And this is just a real simple test if you're at risk, is if you get a pimple, does it turn dark and stay dark for a while? Then that says you're definitely at risk of PIH, and you have to be really careful with any type of cosmetic treatment that creates inflammation of your skin.
Yeah, a lot of times providers will do a patch test on another part of the body.
Yes.
And then see how you respond and then decide to go from there.
Yeah. And sometimes, there are certain lasers that you can do, let's say for laser hair removal, that will work for darker skin. But there are some treatments that you just can't do. And that's problematic. I get patients who come to see me who are African-American, who are Indian, and they say, hey, I want to get like a laser treatment or a deeper chemical peel to really help to rejuvenate my skin. And we just don't have good options, because you don't want to create that acute inflammation that can create that pigment issue.
So these lasers, they're called again IPL?
So IPL is a great option for people in general with lighter skin. You can use it very sparingly. Once again, you want to do some patch testing if you have a little more melanin in your skin. But they're, I think, a great option for people who do have spots, because it really can effectively get rid of them. If you want to hit that from an inside-outside perspective, then you combine the IPL with a brightening type of a cream. When you're looking at brightening creams, the ingredients I would look for would be licorice root extract, kojic acid, and niacinamide. And these are 3 very safe ingredients in brightening creams that will help with the pigment from the inside out. And then you can do the IPL from the outside in.
So let's go from there. As we're sort of looking for bang for the buck and dollar invested into it, what would you look at next?
So the next one I would look at would probably be microneedling. Okay, so microneedling had its debut, I guess, in dermal rollers. And so there's these rollers that look like kind of paint rollers, but they have tiny little pins or needles on the ends, and people use it to roll over their face. This horrifies dermatologists because of a couple things. Sometimes those pins can be really long. In general, if you get them from a reputable company, let's say based in the United States, usually that's not a big risk. But if you go online and you buy one, let's say on Amazon or on eBay or something like that, and those pins are really long, you can create real trauma to your skin. that trauma can create inflammation. And especially if you've got somebody with darker skin color, now if you're creating all that inflammation on your face, not knowing what you're doing, you could create some major problems. So it started off by these dermal rollers. Now, the mechanism of action of these rollers is that they create acute inflammation or acute injury to the collagen of your skin. So remember earlier we talked about how the collagen of skin is like the logs of a log cabin. And as we get older, those logs start to become frayed, they start to fall apart. What we find is if we do an acute injury to that collagen, as that collagen heals from that injury, it heals in a tighter fashion. And almost all of the cosmetic treatments to tighten skin or to rejuvenate the skin do that by creating a controlled trauma to the collagen of your skin. So lasers do that by creating heat using light energy. Chemical peels do that by using an acid to create a chemical reaction. And microneedling does that by creating literally physical trauma by putting a needle into your skin and creating that trauma. Now, when the trauma is too severe, you create a scar, and that's what you don't want. Okay, so the idea is you want to create enough trauma to the skin that the collagen will create that tighter fibers as it heals, but not so much that it creates an actual scar. So microneedling is a way to essentially do the dermal rolling in a more controlled fashion where you can literally set the depth of how deep those needles go, and it can go anywhere from 1 to 2 millimeters, create that controlled trauma, and that controlled trauma, once again, will create tighter skin. And the reason why this is a good bang for your buck comes down to, once again, cost. For me to buy a laser, like I said, that's probably around $150,000. An IPL, probably about $80,000. A microneedling device, $3,000 or $4,000. Okay, so that cost of the actual treatment is not going to be as much. So you can get a microneedling treatment for $80, $100, $150 and get a nice improvement. Now, what can you do to supercharge that microneedling treatment? Okay, there are a number of things you can do. If you are a fan of regenerative therapies, using your body's own rejuvenative abilities to turn back the clock, this idea of autojuvenation, then you can use your body's own PRP. So you take blood from your arm, you spin it down for the platelets. The platelets are filled with growth factors. You make those tiny little holes in your skin by doing the microneedling. Those holes can act as channels to the deep skin, okay? Because studies show that those holes will remain open for a couple of hours. So now if you apply an onlay, you apply your PRP on the surface of the skin after you do microneedling, that PRP will seep into those tiny little holes, get into the deeper skin, and rejuvenate the skin from the inside out. And so that's a way to supercharge it, but that also adds a bit of cost to it as well. So if I were to pick great bang for your buck, just for overall facial rejuvenation, microneedling may be one of the best ones because it's so inexpensive for what you get. You can add things on top of it, like I said, like the PRP to even supercharge it more.
Is it true that you get a boost in sort of collagen growth right afterwards from microneedling?
I don't know that it's been studied to show as far as the timing of it, but yes, those treatments do improve the collagen and can potentially increase the thickness of collagen. The issue, it's funny because if you talk to dermatologists, and I put stuff out there on collagen supplements and stuff, and, you get dermatologists, no. The only real way to improve collagen skin is to do fillers, and there are collagen stimulating fillers out there, but come on, there's other ways you can stimulate collagen that we just talked about. Other people will say, oh, you got to do fillers or laser treatments, but I think this is kind of the commoditization of the anti-aging part of it. And it's like, well, you can do the things that I make money off of that will make you look younger. So there are ways to improve collagen. I do think, there are studies to my knowledge that laser treatments can help to thicken collagen potentially. I'm not sure with microneedling that I've actually seen those studies, but I do believe that should be true.
All right, where do you go from there?
Okay, so the next step that I would look at bang for your buck is going to be tightening of the skin more aggressively. Okay, so we're kind of talking about surface treatments. One of the things that we see as we get older, especially once you hit your 50s, is the skin starts to get looser. And one great way, and probably the gold standard right now to tighten up the skin, would be radiofrequency microneedling. Okay, so how does that work? Okay, so basic microneedling, you make the poke in the skin, create controlled trauma, the collagen gets tighter, those log cabins get better. The logs in the log cabin get better. Second step, you put the PRP on top of it. It seeps into the skin. That helps with the growth factors to rejuvenate the skin from the inside out. You take that to the next level, and now those needles, as they go into the skin, the needle itself is insulated all the way up to the tip of the needle. that tip of the needle emits radio frequency energy or heat. Now you're creating heat to the deeper skin, and studies show that if you heat the skin temperature to a certain amount, typically it's 42 degrees on the surface, you can cause that collagen to denature once again and heal into a tighter fashion. And so that's taken that really up to the next level. It's called radio frequency microneedling. It's done with a device called the Morpheus 8, and there's very minimal downtime. But if you're looking for effective skin tightening without surgery or true invasiveness, then that right now is a gold standard.
Do you think that for, let's say, somebody like myself who generally, like, I'm not afraid of the sun, but I don't overexpose myself to the sun. I have a simple skincare routine. I'm going to add a few things after talking to you and reading your book that's there. I will wear, some of the sunscreens, like the mineral-based ones, even on a day like that I'm coming into the studio, because I learned that a lot of these lights that we use are also damaging to the skin, and we're sitting underneath them for like 2 hours at a time, computer light sometimes. Do you think that for me, who is more on even though I've been convinced that Botox is generally fine for most people, right? There's going to be extreme cases that you mentioned earlier. And some of the studies that people have talked about, well, it doesn't let you express your full emotions or other stuff because you can't feel those wrinkles in the body. I looked at some of those studies. They're super, super small, like they're super tiny, and they are outweighed by the vast majority of studies showing that like Botox has generally been safe, right? So for me, who's still on the more precautionary side, like, okay, I don't see me sort of using Botox anytime soon. I'm 41, so it may change when I get into my 50s. Do you think that regular usage of microneedling could give me a lot of the benefits that would be there for my skin that would help me potentially maybe avoid having to, go down the Botox rabbit hole in the future?
To an extent, yes. The microneedling, though, treats something different than Botox does. That's the difference. So Botox will treat those dynamic lines because those dynamic lines are made by those muscles, and the only way to truly prevent those wrinkles from coming is not using those muscles. Now, there is something called muscle training, where there's a story long ago, and I don't know if it's true, but supposedly Elvis prohibited Priscilla Presley from elevating her eyebrows because he did not want her to make wrinkles of her forehead.
Wow, that sounds super toxic.
Yes, not good. There are actual things that people do now to try to train their facial muscles not to create lines. So for example, there are certain types of facial tapes and even silicone pads people put on their forehead, on their crow's feet, and areas like that. There's a belief that I think is false that will help splint wrinkles and make wrinkles smoother. I don't think that's true. There's no science that I know of to show that that's true. But there is a sense, there is a belief that I think that does make sense that you can, by putting, let's say, these one's called frownies, where it's like an adhesive that you put on your skin, typically at night, then I think that it can remind you not to create certain lines. So for me in general, I have Botox literally just right between my brows. That's it. That's the only place I get it. I wouldn't mind getting it here on my crow's feet. And I'm starting to get the permafrown that my dad and grandpa had. So if you inject a tiny bit of Botox under each corner of the mouth, it can help reverse the permafrown, which I'm like deathly afraid of having. Not Botox, but I'm deathly afraid of having the permafrown, not the Botox. But there, so the Botox will treat certain things. Microneedling is going to be more for overall skin tone and texture and overall tightness. It's not going to prevent you from getting crow's feet.
Yeah.
The only way to prevent you from getting crow's feet or forehead lines is just not to create those lines over and over and over again. And so can you train yourself not to do that? I love Jim Carrey. I think he's absolutely hilarious. As he's getting older, he's got a lot of lines. And why does he have so many lines? I think one of the reasons why is because he is so expressive. And I see patients of mine who they come and talk to me and they're so expressive. They're always, eyebrows are moving up and down and they're making all these faces and stuff like that. Those lines are going to be built in. And, that's when I'm a huge fan of yoga. But there's this phenomenon called face yoga that I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
But there's this phenomenon called face yoga that's out there where people are taught to make these very extreme facial expressions. And they claim that helps to reduce the wrinkles of the face and make you look younger. And so you can see these videos of people online where they're making these just weird expressions. Things that, like, if you're on public doing that, people would look like, what is wrong with this person? And there's this belief then by doing that, you're going to strengthen the facial muscles and tighten them because they get droopy as you get older. And that is actually completely false. Face yoga, interestingly, there was a study that looked at face yoga and did find beneficial effects of it in one specific way. So when you're doing these facial muscle exercises, essentially is what face yoga is exercise the muscles of your face. You will make the wrinkles deeper by making those expressions over and over and over again, and especially extreme expressions. But you actually do, like working out your biceps or your triceps or your pecs, you can make those muscles slightly bigger. And there are studies that show that the volume of those muscles increases. So you get a little bit of a three-dimensional volume enhancement by doing those exercises. But the negative is probably as time goes on, those wrinkles are going to get deeper. So there's kind of that trade-off. You know, one of the things we haven't mentioned are fillers. Fillers hugely popular and throughout the country. Where we're recording here in LA, I mean, it seems like everybody on the street has filler. And years ago, back in 2004, I published one of the seminal papers in our plastic surgery literature called The Volumetric Facelift. And this was one of the first papers that described facial aging in 3 dimensions. And before that, plastic surgeons talked about aging in 2 dimensions. So as you age, it's gravity pulling your skin down. So you want to lift everything. So hence facelifts, brow lifts, eyelid lifts, breast lifts, all that. And this was one of the first things my old mentor in LA here, Dr. Richard Ellenbogen, taught me when I came here that was absolutely mind-blowing to me, was looking at facial aging in 3 dimensions and the fact that we lose volume as we get older. And so this paper explained how you could combine lifting in a 2-dimensional fashion with adding volume in it as that 3rd dimension for the most natural rejuvenation. And like anything in plastic surgery, you take an idea that has a lot of sense, makes a lot of sense, and if you apply it conservatively, it can really work well for people. But Hollywood especially, they take that and they think more is better, and now you get these pillow faces of people who are just overly plumped up and stuff. So long story short, face yoga does help because you can cause those muscles to get bigger. If you've got a real skinny, thin face and you say, hey, I'm aging because my face is too narrow and thin and I don't want filler, then you can try face yoga, but the side effect potentially is deeper wrinkles.
Okay, got it. All right, so fillers. While we have some time here as we're winding down, do you want to touch on that for a moment?
Sure.
Is it something that you recommend? Is it one of those things where it's about, hey, do it the right way? Are there any concerns about sort of the same concerns that people generally have about injecting or placing something that's a foreign object inside of the body?
Mm-hmm.
We've done episodes on breast implant illness and how the body can develop an autoimmunity type reaction.
Mm-hmm.
For years, the FDA said that there was no problem. These are completely safe. And now, out of just thousands of women sort of speaking up and about their own testimonials, that the tide has turned a little bit. So do fillers work? Do you recommend them? And is there any sort of long-term concerns with sort of injecting a foreign object inside of your body?
So yeah, fillers are the number 2 most popular cosmetic treatment in the country. The fillers started off with collagen. So this is back before your time. There was an actress named Barbara Hershey who was in a movie called Beaches, and she got a lot of flack because reportedly she had collagen injections into her lips prior to this movie. Collagen was popular in the 90s. Typically, that was kind of when it was real popular as the only filler that was available. But the problem with collagen, injectable collagen, is that number one, for most of the time when we had it available, you had to do skin testing to make sure you didn't react to it. And number two, it went away very quickly. It only lasts maybe 2 or 3 months. And so hyaluronic acid fillers started to become popular in the early 2000s, and they have been very popular ever since then. Hyaluronic acid is a naturally occurring moisturizer of the skin. And now the benefit of hyaluronic acid filler mainly is that it can be very adaptable. So there are certain hyaluronic acid fillers that are very thin and can be used in parts of the face that have thinner tissue, like let's say under the eyes. And then there are other types of hyaluronic acid fillers that are very thick and have a lot of stiffness to them, where they can create actual contours, like putting it into the cheeks. And the main benefit of HA filler, hyaluronic acid filler, is that it is completely reversible. There is a antidote, an enzyme called hyaluronidase, where if you inject it into an HA filler, it can cause that filler to melt away, some of it immediately. So once again, I wrote this paper back in 2000, co-wrote it back in 2004. The idea of adding volume can be beneficial. Fillers started coming out before that, but we really started using it in the cheeks in the last 10 to 15 years and in other parts of the face to add volume and to literally reshape the face. And it can be a very, very powerful way to help reverse the appearance of aging. The problem with fillers, though, is that unlike Botox, if it's injected improperly, you could have absolutely devastating complications. And the one that you have to worry about is intravascular injection. I mentioned earlier that when we do surgery, we need blood supply to heal a body part, because you need blood supply to body parts for them to function and to be alive, essentially. If you inject filler improperly or accidentally into a blood vessel that supplies a part of your face and it clogs that artery up, that part of your face will not get enough blood supply and can literally die. That is not a danger that you see in Botox. And so there are people who've had filler injected accidentally into blood vessels. They've lost parts of their nose, parts of their lip. And there's even a mechanism where you inject it into the face. If it's injected it's kind of like the perfect storm of horrible situation where people have gone blind from injections of filler.
Wow.
So you got to be very careful. You have to make sure that you have a good injector and ideally use an HA filler. There are other fillers out there that are not made of hyaluronic acid that if you accidentally inject those into the blood vessel, essentially you're just screwed. And there are doctors who are still injecting those types of things. And so really with filler can be very powerful. Honestly, bang for your buck with filler is pretty poor because it's really expensive and you buy typically 1 cc at a time, which is like a minuscule amount. And so usually people need to get a couple of 1 cc syringes to even get much of a visible result. And so it doesn't go as far as, let's say, Botox bang for your buck wise. So filler is good if you want to plump up your lips, if you want to add volume to your cheeks, if you want to fill in your nasolabial folds or your smile lines. It can be very powerful to do that. You just have to be very careful with it.
As we're winding down here, before we talk about, all the great ways that people can keep in touch with you, where they can pick up your book, other things like that, is there anything else that you want to say about maybe a treatment you didn't mention? Like if you really have the resources and somebody wants to go all out, or something that you want people to avoid, Well,
one thing that we haven't touched on, I think that is a huge deal for people, is hair and thinning hair. So
yeah, you recently did a whole podcast episode. I believe you were on a hike with your wife and she
Yeah.
noticed that your hair was thinning. My podcast audience gets a nice little view of my hair in the upper right-hand side. It's thinning a little bit.
Good. So my wife years ago, when we did some type of like couples thing, and we had to write like, what is the thing that you find about your spouse that's most attractive? And she put my hair. And so that was always something that was in the back of my mind. And so we were on this trip to Jamaica and we were doing this cliff jumping and I was about to jump off the cliff and my wife was on a rock above me because she's shorter than me. So she never sees the top of my head. She goes, "Oh my gosh, you're balding on top." And I was like, "What?" And I almost fell off the cliff at that time because I was like, no. So thinning hair is something that affects men and women. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is it is a big issue for a lot of women as they get older as well. And the thing with thinning hair is that there are so many things that you can do naturally to rejuvenate that part of the scalp. And so for me, just to tell my story, when that happened to me, I said, look, I'm not going to, you could think, oh, get on Propecia, get on minoxidil. And I said, look, I want to do this naturally. I don't want to take an actual medication. So
because there's some concerns with those that they like reduce libido and other things like that, right? Like that's the concern with a lot of those.
Mainly Propecia, that's going to be more hormone mediated. Rogaine is actually more of a side effect of this medication. It's topical, so I don't know that it has a whole lot of systemic effects. But still, there are other options that can work just as well that are natural.
So you want to do it naturally.
So yeah, you want to start naturally. The first thing that I started is to get on a supplement. So there are multiple different nutritional deficiencies that can predispose to thinning hair. Iron deficiency is one of them, zinc deficiency, vitamin D. I didn't want to go through all the labs and stuff. And there are commercially available kind of all-in-one thinning hair supplements. The one that I used was Nutrafol that people can take. And so I started taking a supplement just in case this was more nutrition deficiency type of an issue. We mentioned earlier red light therapy. There are devices now, and I mentioned a couple of studies for red light therapy for anti-aging of the face, but there is a ton of studies on low light laser therapy, or essentially red light therapy for thinning hair. And I have one that's a helmet that has like over 200 lasers inside of it. I wear it for half an hour every other day. It's a cold laser, so you put it on, you don't feel anything, you just watch TV while you have it working. And there are so many studies that show that that can help. And it's the same idea. The idea is that you impart that laser energy to your follicles. It helps the follicles hopefully go into a growth phase from more of the transient kind of quiet phase, essentially. And then the other thing is using a topical treatment. There was a study actually that compared minoxidil to topical rosemary oil. So for rosemary oil, you want to take the essential oil and then you want to put a carrier oil with it, or there are actual commercially available forms of rosemary oil for the scalp. And this study compared minoxidil, it's a smaller study, compared minoxidil to topical rosemary oil and found very similar effects for thinning hair, except the rosemary oil had a lower risk, a lower rate of skin irritation, scalp irritation from it. And so using some type of a topical, one that ideally contains rosemary oil would be what I would recommend. Once again, if you're looking for a pharmaceutical, minoxidil would be the other option. And that's really it. The other thing that I've added more recently is dermal stamping. So I mentioned earlier the idea of dermal rolling, and more people have now gone to a stamping as a better option. And essentially it's those little needles on a round stamp that you can stamp on your scalp. Some people do that for their face. Same idea, you get that controlled trauma. I do that prior to applying my topical. The idea is the same thing. You can maybe get some seepage of that topical into the deeper scalp area to potentially help to grow hair. So that's very simple ways to do it. And I would encourage people, if you're having thinning hair, take those steps where you do the supplement, you add the low light laser or the red light laser to your scalp, and then use some type of a natural topical, whether it's rosemary oil. If you want to go minoxidil, you can do that. And then ideally the dermal stamping. If those don't quite get it, then the next step would be injections of PRP, platelet-rich plasma. Instead of putting it out as an onlay, you actually will inject it into the scalp.
Have you noticed a difference with
I
your
have.
hair?
Yeah. It's slow. You have to literally give it 4 to 6 months to really see a significant improvement. But I have, especially after I started doing the dermal stamping, which I've done more in the past like 4 to 6 months or so.
As we wind down here, anything that you want to say about sort of the topic of, beauty kind of gotten out of control, or like the obsession? And I feel preemptively, before you chime in, a big part of your work is that everything you've been talking about and the way that you highlight it inside of your book has been really not just about looking a particular way, because there's plenty of treatments that are available for people. And we're in Los Angeles, so you can see it all over the place, but you're really focused on the foundational things that are also beauty as a reflection of health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are certain attributes like clean skin, why are certain things like aging well, why is that attractive to us? Because it's a sign of sort of internal health that's there inside of the body, right?
That's perfect.
Regardless of what age people are, right?
Yes.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
I think that health, if I think about what is beautiful, health always is kind of the starting point for it. But at the same time, one of the things that I'm really very cognizant of on social media, and I've got a big social media following, as you mentioned, is that I do believe strongly that there's beauty in everybody. And, just for example, there was a video that a wedding dress company posted, and it was basically it was women who were modeling a wedding dress, and it started out with extra, extra small, and then it went all the way up to like a triple XL. And each of these women modeled it, and they had big smiles on their faces, and they felt beautiful. They looked like they did. And I actually, as a physician, I look at it one way, but as a human being, I look at it a different way. As a human being, I looked at this and I thought, how awesome is it for women of all different sizes and shapes to feel beautiful? Like, I think we all deserve to feel beautiful no matter what. Interestingly, I posted this video just as I think it's empowering for people because I think there's beauty in everybody. And I had so much hate on this video. There was a plastic surgeon, actually, a real plastic surgeon, who commented that overweight women are, what did he say? He said that they are displeasing to the male eye, and that overweight women are disgusting and they need to change.
Wow.
And I would never, it was this long diatribe. I mean, from a physician, now you and I, we are in the job of helping people to be healthier. And people got mad because they said, you're a physician. Why aren't you telling these women that they need to lose weight, that they're unhealthy? They're not beautiful, they're unhealthy. And the fact is that there are so many people out there, if you are listening to this and you are overweight, you don't need me to tell you that you're overweight. You don't need me to tell you that being overweight can create many potential health issues. You know that. But how many people are out there saying that you are beautiful inside and out, and that making simple changes to your health can help you feel even more beautiful? And I think that's, for me, the key is that, it's all about positivity. I think there's so much negativity out there, and as physicians and as healthcare influencers, we have a lot of power to shape this discussion. And so for me, just being a simple doctor going out there saying, you know what, you're beautiful. And yes, if you want help to get healthier, I'm here for you. But it does no good, I feel, to make them feel even worse about themselves.
So true.
And so that's kind of, for me, that's what my big thing is that, my book is written for everybody. It's written for people who are biohackers, who are really focused in on their health, but it's also written for those people who, live in the quote unquote flyover states, who laugh along with some of my videos, who really don't know a lot about how the physiology of how the food they eat can really be impacting their skin and their health. And if I can help them to make small changes in their lives to feel better about themselves, then that's a privilege, and that's, I guess, the way I look at it, is none of us are perfect. I mean, I'm here in California. I come here many times a year, and every once in a while, I just got to stop with my kids to In-N-Out because they love it. And and that's what I put in the book is you may see me there and I'm not going to be there looking at you eating it. But if I eat it, then you know what, this is life, and you got to enjoy life.
I actually saw a stat. I don't know if it's true or not. You can chime in, but men on average, their skin is about 25% thicker. Is that correct? Is there any truth to that?
I haven't seen the statistic, but that does sound true, and the reason why is that, we will lose about 1% of the thickness of collagen every year just as we get older. But women will lose, once again, 30% and the first 5 years after menopause, then 2% every year thereafter. And that's why, you can see women, a husband-wife couple, and they're in, let's say, their 70s or their 80s. And the woman, oftentimes the skin is so thin, it's like tissue paper thin, that they even get a scratch and the skin can tear. Yes, men's skin you can see get thinner as well, but usually you don't see it to that extent that you see in women. And I do think that part of this is the loss of estrogen. And now there are even companies that are creating prescription estrogen creams for the face. And there are studies showing that estrogen creams on the face can help to improve the skin thickness. And there are even studies that have looked at hormone replacement therapy, and that also improving the thickness of skin in women as they get older as well.
Well, this feels like a great place just because we've talked about it so much. And please, if you want to deep dive on this, go back to our first interview with Dr. Youn. We go deep into collagen as one of the main things, but just give us a little bit of a refresher. Why is collagen so important? And do collagen supplements work? There's an asterisk there, which is, do the right type of collagen supplements work? And what do you recommend?
So basically collagen makes up about 70 to 80% of the thickness of our skin. And it's a part of our skin that causes our skin to feel tight, to feel firm, and to essentially feel youthful. And like I mentioned earlier, we lose collagen in our skin starting in our mid-20s. Once again, women, when they hit menopause, man, that collagen really takes a dive. And so how do you then replenish collagen? Collagen degradation, one of the main causes of aging of our skin. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you're getting sufficient amounts of protein in your diet. So then the question is how much protein? Does it matter what type of protein? Well, in general, you want to look at getting approximately 100 grams a day of protein. Now, obviously, that's going to be different if you're a larger male than if you're a smaller female. And in general, you want to look at a gram per ideal body weight pound of protein a day in general. Now, once again, depending on, your lifestyle and how you eat, that you can vary that. Some people look at 30 grams per meal. Some people find that to be easier. But in general, you do need to have sufficient amounts of protein because collagen is a protein. It's a large protein. And you do need to have those protein building blocks to help with collagen support and preventing that degradation. Now, when you're looking at collagen supplements, those have been shown in many, many studies to help improve the thickness of collagen of the skin. People used to believe that the issue with collagen supplements, and they would say, oh, they don't work because collagen is such a large protein, it gets broken down in your gut, and how do you even know it's going to get to your skin? So the key really is if you're going to take a collagen supplement, make sure it's made of hydrolyzed collagen peptides. And what that means is that you take that large collagen protein and you break it down into small groups of amino acids called peptides. And those peptides are made to actually be bioabsorbable, that your gut can actually absorb them. Now, when there have been studies have looked at patients who have taken collagen supplements, typically for about 2 months, hydrolyzed collagen peptide supplements, and they've actually drawn blood in patients and found an increased amount of collagen in the actual blood with these collagen supplements. And they've actually biopsied the skin and found an increase in collagen precursors in the skin as well. And there are many studies that have shown an improvement in the hydration of the skin, in the turgor of the skin, and the overall thickness of the skin as well. So for me, my feeling at this point is that the science is all there. There's still going to be anti-supplement doctors who are going to poo-poo any supplement that is on the market. Collagen supplements do work. Anecdotally, I'll tell you, full disclosure, I have my own Youn Beauty skincare and supplement line that we have talked about before. Our top selling product actually, believe it or not, is not a skincare product. It's our supplemental collagen. It's type 1 collagen. That's a collagen found in skin, hair, and nails and bones. And I think that's important that you want to make sure you get type 1 collagen if you're going to take a collagen supplement. So the stories that I've heard from our purchasers, my followers, my patients who've taken collagen, it's amazing. I mean, my mom, I was visiting her a couple months ago, and she said, I've been taking this collagen supplement and I've been noticing my hair is getting thicker. Do you think it's this collagen you keep sending me every month? So I have my mom and my sister, and actually my brother and sister-in-law, they get collagen basically auto shipped to them every other month, 2 tubs, so that they can use that, because I definitely believe in it. And the anecdotal stories are endless of people who've found improvement in their hair, their skin, their nails. They found their arthritis gets better, chronic pain improves. So many different stories that we hear anecdotally. You just need to read a half of them and know that, man, this stuff definitely works. Now the science shows it as well. But I also, before we finish the collagen thing, we got to talk about vegan collagen as well, because that's also a question that I get. Does vegan collagen work? Is vegan collagen real collagen? Well, the answer is no. Collagen supplements have to be animal-based. Now, they can be marine, so they can be fish-based, or they typically can be cow-based. Those are kind of the 2 main kinds. But there is quote unquote vegan collagen on the market. And what that essentially is they are protein powders that also have other kind of collagen precursors. So more than just protein for the production of collagen, you need other things as well. You need vitamin C. Vitamin C is super important for the production of collagen. This goes back to our high school, middle school biology classes, when we learn about scurvy, and when the sailors would go off sailing and they'd run out of fresh fruits and vegetables, vitamin C levels would drop because you got to get vitamin C every day. Then they would get sores in their mouth and in their skin due to lack of vitamin C and the breakdown of collagen. So vegan collagen supplements typically contain collagen precursors, basically vegan protein, but also vitamin C, and then other factors that are involved with collagen production like zinc and hyaluronic acid and copper. So these are things too, once again, if you want to take a supplement, I think vegan collagen supplements are great. I've never seen a study on them, but they make sense, that they can help, but it's not the same as a true hydrolyzed collagen animal-based supplement.
That's great. We'll make sure we link to all your products. We're going to talk about some other ones that you have as well too on the skincare side, but the collagen we'll link to in the show notes if anybody wants to check it out. On that same topic, are there, your top list of things that work supplement-wise for the skin and don't work? We know collagen is number 1. Is there anything else that you've seen that genuinely helps skin, youthfulness, and also obviously might also benefit other aspects of your health? Anything else you'd put as your second or third?
I think when you're looking at a direct impact on your skin, collagen, no question, is going to be number 1. Number 2, and that's going to be really so far above any of the other supplements. Now, I do take supplements every day. I think some of them can be very helpful. Right now, one of the supplements I'm taking is Nutrafol. This is actually a hair supplement. And that I do believe has a direct impact on hair growth. And there are other ones. There's Viviscal is another brand, but Nutrafol is the one that's most popular. And that contains a multitude of things in it, from vitamin C, vitamin D. It contains zinc. It contains biotin, and many, many other things are in that. So that's something, if you've got a hair issue, I think you get a direct benefit from taking a hair loss supplement like a Nutrafol, where you'll see that direct correlation. Other than that, the connection between taking a supplement and skin improvement and quality is going to be more indirect. So for example, if I had to put a number 2 after collagen, it would probably be taking a daily probiotic. We do know that the microbiome is directly connected to the skin. There is a gut-skin axis, and there are now some studies showing that if your microbiome is unhealthy, that has been correlated or connected to inflammatory disorders of the skin. So eczema, rosacea, even acne. There are studies showing that these types of inflammatory skin disorders can have a direct connection to the health of your microbiome. And so, I do believe that taking a daily probiotic can definitely be helpful, as well as eating probiotic-rich foods. So that would probably be my number 2. Number 3 might be taking a omega-3 supplement. And that's going to be to reduce overall inflammation. I think that's great for reducing chronic inflammation. Are you going to see a specific improvement in your skin by taking an omega-3 supplement? I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I haven't heard from my patients those types of direct connections that we have seen with, let's say, a Nutrafol hair supplement or specific collagen supplements. But those would probably be the ones that I would put up there. I mean, I'm also a fan of taking a daily multivitamin, of taking antioxidant supplements. But once again, these are going to be things that could definitely be great for the skin, but I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, I'm going to take this for a month and I'm going to see my skin improve in its appearance. I mean, it might, but it's not a promise that I would make you, that's for sure.
Are there any trends that you see out there? Foods that people talk about, supplements, interventions that are just top of mind, where it's like the bang for the buck is not there? Let's start off with, is there anything on the dietary side that you see trending these days on TikTok or social media where maybe the evidence is shaky, and maybe even in some instances, this thing could not be beneficial? So it could be diet, supplements, any, treatments that come to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of treatments out there that have been promoted. I think one of them that's kind of funny is the idea of perineal sunning. And it's this idea that if you get sun on your genitals, that's going to help improve your vitamin D levels. It's going to help with improving your overall health and wellness. Interestingly enough, getting sun on your body. Okay, so you mentioned earlier sunscreen, and I am a fan of sunscreen. When I'm out, I will wear sunscreen. I am not a dermatologist. I know dermatologists of mine who will be sitting in a basement all day and they're going to put sunscreen on before they go in their basement all day. I'm not one of those types. Studies show you need, if you're Caucasian, you need 15 minutes of sun to prevent a vitamin D deficiency. If you're Caucasian, okay, with light skin. If you are darker skin, then the amount of time you need in the sun is greater than that. And how much greater, it really depends on how dark your skin is. That being said, we also know that UV radiation is the number 1 cause of skin cancer. And I've seen enough patients in my office who have skin cancer and huge, they lose parts of their face and stuff, that you do not want to get that. So there is a belief that if you tan your genitals, you sun your genitals, that's going to be even more powerful than just getting sun on your face or your arms or your legs. And there actually is a little bit of truth to that. And I'll explain why. There is proof to show that if you get sun on parts of your body that normally does not get sun, that your body will technically create more vitamin D from that type of sun exposure than from exposure to areas that are normally getting it. Okay, so if, let's say, you go out with your shirt off, and now you go off with your shirt and you're getting some sun that way, then you are going to create more vitamin D that way than if you're just exposing your arms, your legs, and your thighs, even if you're looking at the same amount of exposed skin, essentially. But there is a belief that if you tan your genitals, that is like exponentially more vitamin D. And that I've not seen any proof of. And so that's one thing that I think just doesn't work. I'm definitely a fan of, I think, getting sun in moderation because I think it's great for your health. I mean, I live in Michigan, so God forbid, February when the sun comes out, we're all out there getting sun. I like it. It's therapeutic. You get vitamin D from it. But also I think there is overdoing it as well. And I think overall with sun protection, there is in some circles, this belief that you only get skin cancer if you have a poor lifestyle or you're eating a bunch of seed oils. And that I think has been fully debunked by medical science, is that I think that when you look at, let's say, skin cancer and sun damage, it really is multifactorial. So I do believe that yes, if you are eating a diet rich in seed oils that's inflammatory, are you going to have a potentially higher risk of getting skin cancer? By all means, yeah. It's bad for you. But if you eat a diet like that and you get absolutely no sun exposure at all, you probably are unlikely to get skin cancer. If you combine getting a lot of sun with a horrible diet like that, then you're going to have the highest risk. And so really, I think you got to look at everything as multifactorial. I think that traditional medicine has been guilty of focusing just on sun and not other factors that can cause skin cancer and even premature aging of the skin. And then I think that some of our holistic health colleagues have been overly focused on just the diet being the main cause of it. And I think really what we have to look at, it is a true holistic, approach to this. It's everything. All of this kind of contributes to it. And so we make our own decisions of the type of lifestyle we find that's going to benefit us the best. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to be sun smart, sun aware. And I believe there was a past guest, Dr. Alexis Cohen, who came on the podcast, who also shared some data about how if we don't get enough sun, how we also expose ourselves for other cancers that are not skin-based cancers that are there. People can go back to that episode. I'm not an expert on that. She's a PhD researcher who's looked into that a bunch. So we want to be smart. We want to have a clean diet. We want to make sure we exercise, do all the basics, hydrate, which is obviously super important when it comes to skin health. And we want to be sun aware of its potential damages.
And then just to answer, one other thing that I wanted to bring up, and I mentioned it briefly before, a super hot topic is NAD. And so, when people are looking at anti-aging, NAD supplement being a huge thing right now, there are people getting IV NAD. So basically NAD being an essential part of the body that will help to basically get energy from our cells. And so now a lot of people, very famously, Hailey Bieber and Kendall Jenner, on, I think, the Kardashian show, we're getting IV NAD. And so is that something that could be potentially the fountain of youth? I find that that's very interesting. There still is, we have limited human studies with it. I myself have taken an NR supplement. So NAD basically being only, your body can only get that through an IV, but now there's NR and NMN that you can take as oral supplements. And some people have found that if they do take these types of supplements, that they seem to have more energy afterwards. I haven't seen any studies to show that it may help impact the actual skin and the appearance. But that's a super interesting possibility right now in overall anti-aging medicine, which I'm sure you covered NAD on your podcast before.
Yeah, definitely. A few people have touched on it. Yeah, very fascinating.
My main concern with NAD, and I think a lot of these IV therapies is, I spent 5 years working in the hospitals, whether I was doing plastic surgery or general surgery. I've worked in the ICUs and in trauma bays. Is that the worst thing that happens? One of the bad things that happen as people get older is that they go to the hospital and they can't find IV access because their veins are just shot. They've had so many IVs in the past. Some of them could have been previous drug users. Other than them, their veins just are not good to get IVs in. And in those situations, we have to put central lines in them, which essentially is a large IV that you put into either your subclavian vein or into your groin area. And these are huge veins that go into huge blood vessels. And sometimes it's the only way we can get IV access. And my concern now, when a lot of people doing these IV therapies that are doing it for, let's say, NAD, they're doing it for IV rehydration after going out, on binging alcohol overnight and stuff, is that every time you stick an IV in your vein, you're creating some scar tissue in that vein. And scar tissue builds up with time. And is there any chance that we have, this kind of wellness movement of people who are doing all these IV therapies, thinking that they're doing the right thing for themselves, but then 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the line, they end up in the hospital and they need to get an IV because they're sick. and all their veins have been scarred up because of all these preventative IV therapies. And now they got to get a central line in their neck. That's what I fear. And so my recommendation for your audience is if you're thinking about IV therapy, just put some, think about it. Don't just willy-nilly get an IV therapy for any reason. Make sure that there's a real reason behind it, because these are medical treatments. Every time that needle goes in the vein, you create scar tissue. And are you going to potentially pay the price later on for something that maybe you didn't even really need or benefit from?
What are the things that people are doing today? Both things that they're eating or putting in their body, and the things that they're putting on top of their body that are prematurely aging us.
So I would always start with food. When we talk about in general aging, the way I describe it, it's like you're building a house. And when you're building a house, if you think about actual plastic surgery, and I'm a holistic plastic surgery is like the spire at the top of the house. So you don't focus there. You want to focus at the base of the house, the foundation, and that is food. So the first two things I would look at would be reducing the amount of sugar that you eat, because sugar truly is the great ager of our body, and then reducing the amount of ultra-processed foods. There are different reasons why our skin ages, and especially why it ages prematurely. And the great thing is that just making simple changes in your diet can make a huge impact on how quickly your skin ages. And so if I had to start with one thing, I guess I would start with sugar.
Talk a little bit more about sugar before we talk about things that people put on their skin, and then we're going to get into what people should actually be doing to protect the skin, both from the inside and also things that we can do externally. Talk about sugar for a second. What do you mean exactly? Because for a lot of people, that can be confusing. Are we talking about fruit? Are we talking about this? Are we talking about that? What type of sugar are you talking about? And really, how much sugar do you see a lot of people eating that is prematurely aging them?
So when I talk about sugar, we're talking really, everything that we eat eventually gets broken down into sugar, okay? And so really when I'm talking about sugar, it's going to be the food that you eat that is high in typically refined carbs, okay? So you're getting essentially sugar spikes. Now, when you look at sugar, the sugar will actually age your skin using two different mechanisms. The first mechanism is called glycation, okay? And so sugar can actually bond to the collagen fibers in your skin and cause the collagen to denature and to actually get older. Now, our skin is composed about 70 to 80% of collagen, and that is a part of our skin that causes our skin to feel tight, to feel strong, to look youthful. And as we get older, we lose about 1% of the thickness of our collagen every year, starting about in our mid-20s. Now, in women who go through menopause, that increases to 2% a year. And so when you look at women, especially, as they get in their 70s and 80s, some of them, their skin gets so tissue paper thin that it could actually tear just from getting scratched. And so one of the things we want to do is really focus once again on the collagen being such a huge component of the skin. And the way I describe collagen, they're like the logs of a log cabin. And when you're young, those logs are nice and strong and they're tight and they're new. As we get older, those logs start to fall apart. They start to denature. They start to become not as stable. And what sugar does is sugar can come along and it can actually bond then to the collagen fibers, causing those collagen that has already become a bit kinked and starting to fall apart to become even more kinked and to basically prematurely age it. So that's one of the reasons why as we get older, our skin gets rougher, it gets looser, it gets thinner, and if you add sugar into the mix, that can make things worse. And these sugar collagen hybrids, essentially those combination, are called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. It's kind of appropriately titled AGEs because they basically will age your skin. So that's one way that sugar will age our skin. And a lot of people will then look, okay, then does it matter the types of sugar that you eat? And yes, it does, because on top of that, sugar will age your skin by the process of chronic inflammation. Now, inflammation in general is not always a bad thing. And we have seen lately in the last 5 years where a lot of holistic kind of minded and forward-minding physicians and health professionals and biohackers are using acute inflammation as a way to potentially enhance their longevity. In medicine, we look at acute inflammation as being a good thing. If you get a cut on your skin, your body creates acute inflammation around that injury to help heal it faster. When we do laser treatments on our faces or on parts of our body, we're creating acute inflammation, and that can actually enhance or cause that collagen to become tighter and actually more youthful afterwards. but it's the chronic inflammation that can be an issue. And this is something that you've covered in your podcasts and with the information you put out there so well. But when we get chronic spikes of sugar, we get chronic spikes of insulin. Chronic insulin spikes can eventually lead to insulin resistance. And a lot of people look at insulin resistance and they look at sugar and they think about it from more of a metabolic perspective of gaining weight, of energy issues. But you can actually look at it as aging your skin as well, okay? Because chronic inflammation can age the skin. There are even studies that show that when you have high levels of insulin, especially these spikes, you can get more acne and inflammatory skin disorders.
Wow. Do you ever have a patient come into your office and then you can immediately look at their skin and feel, wow, I think this person's eating too much refined sugar, refined carbohydrates in their diet?
We see it all the time. Yeah. I mean, I get people come in. So, I mean, I still have a full-time plastic surgery practice. I get patients come in and I can tell literally in about 10 seconds of sitting down with them if they're a smoker, if they, have a reasonably healthy diet. Now, obviously, I can't tell. There's only so much you can tell just by looking. But you can really tell. You can see if people are inflamed. Your listeners may have friends of theirs, and we see it a lot in men and women where their face is just real red. It's ruddy in texture. There's a difference between a healthy pink color to the skin, which shows good vascularity, and somebody who's inflamed. And you can see oftentimes inflammatory patches, eczema, acne breakouts, and then this kind of red patches over their skin. And that's typically a sign of somebody with really just honestly bad lifestyle, especially a bad diet.
So we're really talking about pharmacological levels of sugar that a lot of people are eating. And those would be coming from refined, carbohydrates is one, like
Yeah.
too many of those inside of the diet,
Yeah.
right? But really in America, primarily that's going to be coming from people doing like a lot of soft drinks and sugar sweetened
Yes.
beverages.
And there was a study I saw that showed that in the standard American diet, 20% of the calories in the standard American diet comes from sugar sweetened drinks. 20%. And when you think about that, that's like 1 out of every 5 calories that the standard American diet that Americans essentially eat have absolutely no nutritional value to them. We're talking energy drinks, we're talking soft drinks, we're talking fruit juices. For me, it's interesting, like yourself, I grew up with Asian parents who, I was given a traditional Korean diet growing up, but I grew up in the middle of Michigan. And so where I grew up in a tiny town in the middle of Michigan, what did my friends eat? It was all meat and potatoes. And so I had this kind of weird dichotomy of I would go home and eat with my parents and we would eat these healthy foods. It would be, rice and fish and kimchi and garlic. And then I would go out with my friends and it would be Big Macs and French fries and Taco Bell. And it's this weird dichotomy. And when you really look at it, there's such a huge difference when you look at the quality of the food. One set of food you look at and you know where that food came from. The other set of food you look at and you don't even know where that came from, like what type of fruit or vegetable created this food and what type of chemicals were put into it to make it taste that way. It's a very interesting thing. When I go back and I think about my childhood, it's like, wow. And I never realized it at that time, that, geez, this is like one diet was keeping me alive and the other diet was slowly killing me.
Mm. Are there things that people are putting on their skin that we might want to tell people to pause or stop? Just like you were talking about, things that prematurely age our skin that we're eating. Is there anything that you see on a regular basis? We just did an entire episode with a toxicologist who came on and talked about the concerns around a lot of the toxins that are in our cosmetics and the supplies that we're using. So are there things that you worry about as a holistic sort of plastic surgeon that you see people putting on their skin that prematurely ages them?
It's interesting. I went through all of traditional medical training. So I did 4 years of medical school. I got an MD, and then I did 3 years as a general surgeon where I worked in surgical ICUs. I worked in trauma centers. And then I did 2 years of plastic and reconstructive surgery. And then I did a year of a cosmetic fellowship out in Beverly Hills here. And interestingly enough, throughout that entire time, I had almost zero education in nutrition and even skincare, believe it or not, because there was actually in my area where I trained, dermatologists and plastic surgeons did not get along. It was a turf war between them for people, for like patients who want Botox and fillers and stuff like that. So even though I was in this plastic surgery residency program, we would never spend any time with dermatologists to learn skin health because dermatologists didn't want to give us their secrets, and plastic surgeons the same thing. So I ended up, starting up my practice, a cosmetic practice in Michigan. And like most plastic surgeons, I sold skincare products, and I sold the medical grade products that they reached out to us that other practices sold. And for many, many years, I had this secret that I never let my patients know, is that all of these products I was selling to them, these medical grade products that I touted, I could not use them myself. Because if I put them on my skin would break out in hives. I would get rashes. I would get itchy. I would get red and irritated. And so for years, I used water, I used bar soap, and I used basically the most basic cleanser you could think of, all the while selling these products to my patients with, these medically active ingredients. And it didn't come down to, and it really came down to a point in my practice where a bad event essentially opened my eyes to the fact that what I was doing was not right. And I started looking into holistic medicine, and I started actually using skincare products from natural companies that did not add parabens to their products, which are considered potential hormone disruptors. They didn't put fragrance in their products, which could potentially cause skin irritation. Formaldehyde releasers they kept out as well. And I started using these other products, and I go, wow, I could put this on my skin and my skin feels great afterwards. I didn't know that was even possible. And so that got me looking down really a rabbit hole of skincare, and the fact that, when you look at the ingredients of so many skincare products that are sold in department stores and even in doctors' offices, they're filled with, once again, fragrances that can cause irritation to the skin, fragrances that really, they don't even have to tell you what's in that fragrance. Basically, they could just put artificial fragrance, and that could be basically a trade secret, and you don't know what's in there. As well as parabens, as well as phthalates, and all these other types of potentially harmful ingredients. When you look in the United States, the FDA has banned literally 11 ingredients from skincare products. When you look in the EU, it's hundreds.
In Europe.
Yeah, in Europe, it's hundreds that they've banned. It's a very, very big difference.
Wow. So the concern would be, besides these things prematurely aging our skin, the potential for them. And what I found out is that as I started going down this rabbit hole myself, a lot of companies themselves don't actually know what's in them, because they'll order these fragrances or these proprietary blends from third-party companies. And for that company, they don't want to reveal what's inside of it.
No.
So sometimes you'll ask a company, hey, what's in this fragrance? And they actually don't know what's inside of it, because they don't have the information. They order it from somebody else.
Yeah, it just says fragrance.
So besides these things potentially being irritating to the skin, prematurely aging the skin, they're actually not good for your body. They're going to cause all sorts of downstream issues, which is why there's this entire movement of people moving towards clean beauty and cleaner ingredients.
Yeah, and the term clean beauty is one that it really gets people up in arms, because unfortunately the term clean beauty, and I use that term myself fairly loosely, there's no real definition of clean beauty. And so that is something that in general, if you're looking at skincare products, you do want to do your research and really just look at the ingredients and see what's in there. Now, there are a couple of great resources for people who do want to look at their skincare products very carefully. There's the Environmental Working Group. They have a really good website called Skin Deep, where you can look up every single different ingredient in your skincare product, and it will give you essentially a clean rating. Are there any dangers to this ingredient? And even more simply, there's and I don't have any ownership interest or connections with these companies. One called the Think Dirty app. Now, I'm sure there are other apps with similar names that you don't want to necessarily download, but the Think Dirty app is one where you can actually use your phone and scan barcodes, and it will actually show the product if it's on their list and give you ratings of what ingredients they have and how safe those ingredients are.
That's awesome. Let's use this opportunity to sort of build the foundation of your framework, which you talk about in your new book. Can you mention the title?
Yeah, it's Younger for Life. And the idea is using the process of autojuvenation to literally rejuvenate yourself, using your body's own regenerative abilities to turn back the clock.
So as part of that core idea, and I love the book, thank you for sending it to me, you have 4 things that age us that you break down. Some we kind of lightly touched on already, but it's worth refreshing. And especially I think people are going to be very interested to hear the deeper rabbit hole and pulling on the thread of collagen, because I know
Mhm.
that in particular, I take collagen
Yes.
and I want to get your thoughts on it, but I got more excited about the potential of collagen after reading your book. So let's walk through the 4 things that age us, starting with the basics of nutrient depletion. What is it about nutrient depletion, and why do you want people to prioritize this if they care about not only looking good on the outside, which by the way, you do a great job of. Would you mind mentioning your age?
I'm 51.
Yeah, you definitely
Thank
look
you.
like you have the skin of somebody who's probably like in their late 30s, mid
Thank you.
30s at
You
least.
know, the funny thing is I get people ask me all the time on social media how old you are, and I joke, I'll put I'm 85, and then people freak out. They go, "Oh my gosh, you look so great for 85." And then sometimes I'll put I'm 25. They go, "Oh, really? You are? Oh, you don't look so good."
Well, sometimes you also joke and you're like, "Oh, it's like here's how to age like an Asian."
Yes,
And you
yes.
have a whole series on
Oh
that,
yeah,
which is funny.
yeah.
We'll link to that below. But nutrient depletion, why should you care about that? If you care about not only how you look, but also everything you're talking about today is also about how you feel on the inside, and it's connected to your health span. So nutrient depletion, let's start with that.
So there was actually a study that looked at fruits and vegetables in the United States from the years 1950 to 1999, and it looked at their number of different nutrients, and it looked at them year by year and how much of these nutrients they basically had. And they found a statistically significant reduction in at least 6 different key nutrients in our produce from 1950 to 1999. And those did include 3 really important ones: vitamin C, protein, and iron. So we do know, there is this claim that holistic health practitioners will make that our soil is depleted, that our industrial farming practices have caused our fruits and vegetables to be less nutritious than they used to be. And this is actually proof for that. This was actually a scientific study that proved that is true. And that study ended in 1999. It's like 24 years later. So now we got to wonder, just how bad is it now? So nutrient depletion is something that we are dealing with as we get older. That's one reason why I'm a big fan of supplements, and supplements something I do cover in the book. But the other thing that you have to think about is, like you mentioned before, is collagen. So nutrient depletion is something I think that's really important. I don't have a lot of solutions for it. Really, it's going to be looking at your macronutrients. It's going to be potentially taking a multivitamin. But where you really, for me, I get into the actionable things is when you do look at collagen and how our skin does lose collagen and the thickness of collagen. So I definitely want to get into that because I think nutrient depletion is something that is super important to realize. You have covered it so well throughout your podcast. I don't have new solutions there other than making sure that you follow your macros. I think there's definitely a big trend towards protein that people don't realize how protein deficient we are, especially as we get older and with sarcopenia. But I would like to pivot towards collagen if that's okay.
Can I interject before you pivot
Sure.
into collagen?
Sure.
I think you have a few important reminders just going inside of the book and kind of going through it and looking at your content. One of the most important reminders, because we have people of all different walks of life, some people that are just starting their health journey, is that just moving from an ultra processed diet or getting calories primarily from an ultra processed diet to moving towards a whole food diet with a good diversity, that alone is going to start putting you in the right direction. And then if you find a good quality, supplement, you have a few that might be listed inside of the book and resources on your website as well. Some that also actually help out with thinning hair that are there.
We can go into that.
We can go into that
detail.
later on.
Yeah.
So just even getting a good quality multivitamin, moving away from ultra processed foods, minimizing sugar as a percentage of your diet to make more room for better quality calories that are there. And then this kind of overlaps into a few other things that will go into inflammation, like getting better quality fats, etc. So those basic reminders are so key because everybody could use a little bit of tuning up when it comes to just getting out of this sort of environment that we're in, where we're surrounded by things that are highly palatable, that want us to overeat, which makes little room for the more nutritious things that are there.
Well, and I think, and what you're hitting too is that a lot of this overlaps, and so you're talking about ultra processed foods, and ultra processed foods actually are super important when you look at free radicals and oxidation that a lot of people don't realize. And when you're talking about, with inflammation and with having whole foods versus some of these ultra processed foods, the idea really is that you want to get back to that diet that I mentioned earlier, where you can actually name like what that food is made out of versus these products that you don't even know what they're constructed of. And it's the idea of hyperpalatability. I mean, this is something that Dr. Hyman obviously has been great with educating people. But the fact is that there is a difference between the food that you eat that's natural, that really in some ways nature has made food so that naturally you're not going to overeat it. So how often do you have a bowl of strawberries and you overeat those strawberries? How often do you have chicken and you just overeat necessarily just chicken? Whereas you get a can of potato chips or a bag of popcorn or French fries, and it's so much easier to overeat those because they're hyperpalatable. They're literally scientifically made for you to overeat them so that they can essentially make more money off of you. And so, yes, I think when you're looking at nutrient depletion, it's a very simple thing to look at, but it's so important, and something that, once again, you and Dr. Hyman have covered so well.
So you wanted to talk about collagen, and I know our audience wants to hear about it, so let's talk about it.
So, I mentioned earlier, collagen, 70 to 80% of the thickness of what your skin is made out of is composed of collagen. We lose the collagen literally 1% every year. So how do you then replenish the collagen? Well, once again, like I mentioned earlier, protein. Collagen is a large protein. And some people ask me, they'll say, well, if I take a collagen supplement and I use a collagen cream, is that going to replenish the collagen in my skin? Well, collagen is a large protein. And the first thing I want your readers your listeners to know is that collagen creams make 0 sense. Okay, collagen is a large protein. Our skin is a barrier, and it's made to keep things out. Collagen being so large, if you put it on the surface of your skin, it's just going to sit there. It's not going to absorb into your skin, and it's not going to make your skin any more youthful. So the first thing I recommend is staying away from collagen creams. I mean, if you want to spend the extra money for it, that's fine, but essentially it's just going to be a fancy moisturizer.
You can also throw out money out your window in your car, just on the freeway if you want to as well.
Collagen supplements are a whole different thing. And as you know, they are very controversial. I made a post on TikTok a couple of years ago touting the benefits of a collagen supplement. And oh my gosh, Drew, the hate was everywhere.
Who was primarily giving the hate? Was it sort of people that are in the medical space?
There are traditional physicians. There are like athletic trainer types, who fashion themselves as nutritionists and things. And then just lay people, saying, well, my doctor said this. It's a lot of my family doctor said collagen doesn't work. Interestingly enough, there's a doctor on TikTok, and he's big on social media. He is a cardiologist, traditionally trained. Also, he's had some nutrition training as well. He's got a big bushy beard. He's an older guy, and he speaks with clarity, and he's very positive and confident in his in what he says and in his conclusions. And he made a video basically stating that collagen supplements don't work, and if you're going to try a collagen supplement, just save your money and get gelatin. It's the same thing. And I didn't reply to it. I'm not going to get in an argument with another physician, but I disagreed with it. And very interestingly, literally like a month and a half ago, I saw that video reappear on social media. And as the video is about over, he shows up, he swipes it out of the screen, and he says, I was wrong.
Wow.
Yeah, he said, I did the research. Collagen supplements do work. They do improve your skin. And I was wrong. It floored me, because how often do you see a 65-year-old physician who speaks whenever they're out there, what they say is right, to come back and say that what they said was not true.
Yeah, it takes a big man, and I hope that we can all do that. And we want to encourage that sort of environment where even I've come on this podcast, say, here's all the things that I've changed my mind on. It's a good trait to have. But
yes.
That was amazing that he did that.
Yeah, and really then so what does the science say? And really that's what it comes down to. Because people say, okay, collagen supplements don't work. The main argument is that it's a large protein, which is true. And if you ingest it, your body will break it down. And how do you know that it actually gets to your skin or where you want it to go? And really the fact of the matter is when you look at collagen supplements, make sure that the supplement that you take is made of hydrolyzed collagen peptides. And that's super important because, once again, collagen being a large molecule, when you actually take a hydrolyzed collagen supplement, that collagen protein has been broken down into amino acids, which are the single units of protein, and their peptides, which are groups of 2 or 3 amino acids or so. And that's done on purpose so that your body can actually absorb it. So it's like the argument that they have in that your body won't absorb it, it will break it down. Yeah, that's why it's made the way that it is. That's why it's hydrolyzed, and that's why high quality collagen supplements typically are hydrolyzed collagen peptides. And then when you actually look at the scientific studies, there are so many of them, and they're powerful studies that do show collagen supplements do create an effect. There was a meta-analysis of I think it was over like 1,200 people published back in 2021. And they looked at people taking collagen supplements for 90 days, and they found a statistically significant improvement in the hydration of the skin, in fine lines and wrinkles, and in elasticity of the skin. And that was a meta-analysis. So it's a group of multiple studies that they put together for higher power. There even have been studies that have looked at collagen supplements where you put somebody on a collagen supplement for 2 months, randomized, placebo-controlled clinical trials, and then you actually take a biopsy of their skin afterwards, and you can see that the skin has thicker collagen and the skin is thicker afterwards. I don't know what other proof is needed. Some people will say, well, maybe if you just increase the protein intake, that will do the same thing. And truthfully, I have not seen a study comparing increasing protein intake to taking a collagen supplement. That would be something that would be very interesting. But there are a lot of studies that are out there that do show that taking collagen supplements can create a profound impact on the skin.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you, as a little bit of a teaser, we'll go into it later on too, but how do you typically take your collagen? And what should people be looking for when they're thinking about getting supplemental collagen?
So full disclosure, I have my own skincare and supplement line. And so we do sell our own supplement. That's actually a collagen supplement. That's our number one seller actually for supplements. As far as me, I think it's pretty simple. The best collagen supplement, and there's some supplements out there, the one that we have, it's tasteless, which is great, but there's some you can, if you taste it, it does have a little bit of a beefy taste to it. So you got to try them ones and see what you like. But in general, a good hydrolyzed collagen supplement should dissolve into any type of a hot liquid. So if you like tea in the morning or if you like coffee, for me now, I used to drink a lot of decaf coffee and I would put it in my decaf coffee. And then I went to the dentist and my dentist is like, you've been drinking a lot of coffee lately and you're getting some staining of your teeth. So now I actually just mix it with hot water and it just tastes like hot water. And so that's what I have a lot of mornings now throughout the week. The other thing you can do is you can mix it into a smoothie or a smoothie bowl. I think that's a nice way to do it as well.
Yeah. So it's a powder. You can get it in capsule form, but a powder just allows like more quantity.
Exactly.
Of you being able to get it in. Otherwise, if you had capsules, you'd have to take like,
yeah, that's the issue.
20 capsules.
Yeah, because those capsules, essentially, they're just filled with the powder inside. And I mean, I take other supplements as capsules. I don't want to take more capsules. I'd rather just put it into my hot drink in the morning and then just drink it up.
So we were sharing the 4 kind of key components that are related to things that are aging us. And we talked about nutrient depletion. Then collagen was really collagen degradation. People are not getting enough collagen ancestrally. It looks like, from the individuals that have come on this podcast, there was more sort of eating the whole animal in different societies.
Yeah.
People don't know, but collagen literally comes from the skin, bones of animals. And that was part of what we ate.
Yeah.
In our, we never wasted an animal. You would always use something. You'd put it in a soup, a broth, a soup, stew, something.
And I think it's important for people to realize too that there are 5 types of collagen. So it's not like there's just one collagen. And that's something you want to look at too with the products that you're using. So for example, some people will take collagen supplements because they have joint issues. Maybe if you've got fibromyalgia, if you've got muscle aches. So type 1 collagen is the one that I typically focus on being a plastic surgeon. That's in our skin, essentially, and our hair and our nails. And there are some collagens that really just supplements that just focus on type 1. Type 2 collagen is collagen that's in our muscles, and type 3 is in our joints. And so you do want to focus on the right types of collagen too. Some collagens, like the one that we have, has all 3, in which case, you can kind of help potentially with a number of different potential issues. Type 4 and 5 collagen really don't really enter the conversation so much. Type 4 is in our kidneys and type 5 is in our placenta. So those you don't really need to worry about. But the other 3, I think it's important to realize that if you do get a collagen supplement, find out what types of collagen are in those, because you want to make sure that you are taking the right one for your specific needs.
It's great. Awesome. We'll link to your website. People can learn more in the show notes. So inflammation was another one. We chatted about that briefly. Anything else you want to say about inflammation before we go to free radical damage?
Yeah, I think inflammation, sugar is a huge part of it. And so as far as avoidance, that's super, super important. But on top, and with AGEs, with the advanced glycation end products, the main thing that I look at that causes those to be created basically is sugar. But you can actually get advanced glycation end products in certain types of foods as well. And typically those are animal-based, high-fat foods that, worst case scenario, are ultra processed and heated to super high temperatures. So for example, and this is really sad, but the type of food with the most amount of advanced glycation end products is bacon. And yeah, not good. And so these advanced glycation end products you can get not just from, unfortunately, just from sugar, but you can also get it from other types of foods. If you grill a steak on the grill, that can also be, potentially high levels of advanced glycation end products. So you're talking, once again, things that will age you. Margarine has a lot of advanced glycation end products as well.
Can I chime in on this? I've written a little bit about it, and
Yeah.
there's a company that's out there. I forgot their name, but they sent me a testing kit. I have no affiliation with them that sort of helps you measure these advanced glycation end products. A lot of people that have come on this podcast talk about a good proxy measure of it would be hemoglobin A1C, right? So you look at your hemoglobin A1C, which is your blood, it looks at the sugars binding inside your body to your cells, and over the course of like 6 to 8 weeks. It's a marker that people use for also diabetes, right? To look at prediabetes, diabetes. So on the side of meat being associated with advanced glycation end products, part of what I've seen is that it's when those foods have been charred or overcooked.
Exactly.
So if you have a lot of charring and you have that literally charcoal that's there, like you go from, instead of lightly cooked or sort of, medium rare sort of piece of
seared,
meat to something that is super charred.
Yeah.
The charring is where the extra sort of advanced glycation end products, only to mention in so that people don't get spooked that, oh, I got to stop eating steak or bacon. There can be ways to cook things that can be in a healthier way. We just want to avoid even vegetables that are super highly charred all the time. Once in a while, here or there, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
But if every day, as part of a staple of our diet, we're eating meat or vegetables that's charred, that seems to be one of the things that is the biggest contribute to these ages in our diet, and then, being created inside of the body.
Correct. And I think that's part of it. One of the things I always try to preach to my followers is, it's like you can follow people on social media who appear to have like the perfect healthy lifestyle where, they're doing everything possible. They're eating all whole foods. They're exercising every day. They're doing cold plunges. They're in the sauna. And reality is that the majority of Americans, we're just trying to make are just trying to make a living and stay as healthy as they can while they take care of their kids, while they, try to put food on the table and stuff. And so really what I try to encourage people is, just like you said, is don't feel guilty if you're at your kid's friend's barbecue and you have a dog from the grill. Like, that's okay. It's a pattern of behavior where if you're eating so much of that it can be very harmful. But at the same time, we do have to live life, and part of living life is enjoying it as well. And I think you'll see too, as you get healthier and healthier for those people who are making these changes, is that you'll find that you don't want to have those foods all the time because they start making you feel kind of crummy. And I do think that there is a huge segment of the American population who just chronically doesn't feel good, but they don't realize they don't, because this is just their like natural level of living. Like they don't know what it feels like to truly feel energetic and healthy, because they've never been given that type of a diet and have been on that type of activity and all that.
It's so true. There's that cheesy old quote from Tony Robbins, but it's so true. And I'm a huge fan of him. Nothing tastes as good as being healthy feels.
Yes.
Right. And when you truly are healthy, and obviously people make jokes about that joke, they make jokes about that quote, and they'll say things like, well, you've never had a piece of bacon, or you've never had, this or that. But really, for our lifespan, when you wake up in the morning and you have energy, when you look in the mirror and you feel like, wow, like I feel healthy, right?
Yeah.
Like you're looking at yourself, you feel healthy, both from the outside in, but the inside out. A big part of that, obviously, too. Working out, having a low stress life, all the things that we talk about and people practice to the degree you get started where you are and you continue to make progress. nothing feels as great as that. You feel like you can conquer the world every single day and you're happy and it's infectious. Everybody
Yeah.
around you feels like, I want to do what he's doing.
Yeah. And I think when you look at, me being a plastic surgeon, you look at your outer appearance, that can really impact how you feel about yourself too. And about, being healthy. Some people say, well, what is beauty? And my first thing would be beauty is health in general. And so being healthy, that's oftentimes really for what I try to recommend as a first step to feeling beautiful about yourself. And so just like you said, that makes complete sense.
So you touched on inflammation, you being a plastic surgeon and having gone through your medical training. I mean, we have to just briefly chat about stress in the context.
Yeah.
Do you feel that stress is really one of the top things that if people have chronic stress, we all have a little bit of stress that we deal with, but what do you want to say about chronic stress?
So you only need to look at the US presidents when they enter office and then when they exit office 4 or 8 years later to know that stress is a huge ager of our body.
You made a video on this one time, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's obvious that's what happens. And so, there aren't studies that I know of that have specifically looked, because how do you quantify stress? That's the problem. How do you do a study on somebody who's really stressed, and see their aging process? It's just, there is no way I know of to actually do that. But we do know in general that there are certain activities that can reduce your stress that do actually help you to feel and look younger. And so one of the big parts of my book is talking about some of these strategies, including meditation, and how meditation can be huge in reducing the amount of stress that you have and even in improving your appearance. I'm a huge fan of yoga. Yoga, I think, especially as we get older, so many benefits, not only just to our stress level, but also to mobility and to balance and to actually your appearance potentially, can be very, very important. And then sleep being a huge part of that as well. I think that's something that our society has really failed us in teaching, is how to deal with stress. And really the difference, like I mentioned earlier about acute inflammation and chronic inflammation, there's a big difference between acute stress and chronic stress. And acute stress being something that is a big focus for anti-aging experts and longevity experts as being a good thing. Hence, all these people jumping into cold bathtubs and trying to stay in them for as long as they can, versus chronic stress, which is a stress that so many of us here, especially in the United States, and even really around the country, around the world, are dealing with when you've got stress of paying your bills, when you have stress from work, obligations, and all of that. That definitely is aging to our bodies. And so trying to take ourselves out of that as much as we can, I think, is so, so important.
YouTube, if you enjoyed what you just saw, keep watching for more great content on how to improve your brain and your life.
Everyone needs to make excess body fat their business. It interferes with your health, no matter what your body size is. If you can start to address that, you're going to allow your inner hardwired metabolism to shine through.